An ostrich is the largest living bird. It may stand 8 feet or 2.4 metres tall and weigh 345 pounds or 157 kilograms. The ostrich is the only bird that has only 2 toes on each foot. The ostrich cannot fly, but it can run very fast. It also has very strong legs and defends itself by kicking. An ostrich usually eats plants, but it will eat lizards and turtles also. It eats sand and gravel to help digest its food. An ostrich may live up to 70 years.
Ostrich reads, ah, ah, ah. O reads, ah, ah, ah.
Oliver Ostrich, an oddball in school. When he sang opera, he sat on a stool.
Oliver Ostrich stood out in a crowd. He never felt really comfortable with the other animals. He looked like a bird, but he was far bigger than the other birds. When the other birds flapped their wings, they flew. When Oliver Ostrich flapped his wings, he just kept on bobbing along the ground in his usual awkward way. The little animals thought Oliver Ostrich was too tall, and the giraffe, elephant and zebra thought he was funny because he didn't have 4 feet. Poor Oliver Ostrich often felt he didn't fit anywhere. Oliver Ostrich was just odd. That's all there was to it. In school, he was different from the others. When everybody sang, it was really embarrassing. Oliver Ostrich had such a high, funny voice, and the sound seemed to wobble like a siren. Everyone tried to be nice. Sometimes, though, it was so funny that the others would smile in spite of everything. Then Oliver Ostrich was really embarrassed. Oliver Ostrich loved to sing, but he just could not sing low. He could not sing softly. If someone else sang with Oliver Ostrich, all you could hear was Oliver Ostrich. If 10 others sang with Oliver Ostrich, you could still hear Oliver Ostrich louder than all the rest. If the whole school sang, you could still hear Oliver Ostrich above everybody. Oh, it was so embarrassing. One day, a famous singer came to town. Everyone was so excited. You should have heard that singer. She sang trills like a bird, and she sang warbles like a warbler. She sang up and she sang down. Her voice filled the whole room. My, how she could sing. The animals clapped and clapped and clapped and clapped. When they stopped clapping, the famous singer said, "Now I want to hear all of you sing. Let me hear you sing your favourite song." The animals were pleased and they wanted to do their best. "Come on, let's really sing," they whispered, but they forgot to tell Oliver Ostrich to sing softly. As for Oliver Ostrich, well, he just loved to sing. He forgot about singing softly. He just tilted up his head and sang as loud as he could. Everybody else was singing, but all you could hear was Oliver Ostrich. Oliver Ostrich's voice was trilling, warbling and soaring, just like the great singer.
The famous singer clapped and clapped when they finished. "I think you are very special singers yourself," she said, "and I hear someone who will be an opera singer one day. You, over there." She pointed straight at Oliver Ostrich. "Come here. I want you to sing with me. Bring us another stool, someone. I want to be sure he can hit the high notes." If ostriches could blush, I'm sure Oliver Ostrich blushed, but he looked very pleased too. The stool was in place, and Oliver Ostrich was sitting on it. The music began, and the great singer began, and Oliver Ostrich began. You never heard such music. Oliver Ostrich had found what he could do. Maybe he couldn't fly like other birds. Maybe he didn't have 4 legs like other animals. Maybe he didn't sing like others. But when it came to singing opera, Oliver Ostrich was not odd. He was just right.
How did Oliver Ostrich feel about the way he looked? Yes, he felt quite uncomfortable and odd, didn't he? Why was he embarrassed to sing? Yes, because he sang different from the others, didn't he? After the famous singer sang, what did she want? Yes, she wanted to listen to Oliver Ostrich sing along with her. Who sang just as well as the famous singer? Yes, it was Oliver Ostrich, wasn't it? On what did Oliver Ostrich sit? Oliver Ostrich sat on a stool. Who sang with the famous singer? Yes, Oliver Ostrich did. Was Oliver Ostrich different? Yes, he was different. There were lots of ways he was different. Are all of us good at some things? Yes, we are. Can you tell me some of the ways that you are good at things?
Can you tell me if this word has the ah sound? Odd. Does odd have the ah sound? Yes, odd has the ah sound. Bog. Does bog have the ah sound? Yes, bog has the ah sound. Fit. Does fit have the ah sound? Fit. No, fit doesn't have the ah sound. Moth. Does moth have the ah sound? Yes, moth has the ah sound. 10. Does 10 have the ah sound? No, 10 doesn't have the ah sound. Flock. Does flock have the ah sound? Yes, flock has the ah sound. Smell. Does smell have the ah sound? No, smell doesn't have the ah sound. Off. Does off have the ah sound? Yes, off has the ah sound. Tuck. Does tuck have the ah sound? No, tuck doesn't have the ah sound. Lot. Does lot have the ah sound? Yes, lot has the ah sound. Listen as I read a sentence. Can you find the word that has the ah sound? A moth looks like a butterfly. Can you find the word that has the ah sound? A moth looks like a butterfly. That's right, moth. The flock of sheep knows its shepherd. Can you find the word that has the ah sound? The flock of sheep knows its shepherd. That's right, flock has the ah sound. Please turn the light off. Can you find the word that has the ah sound? Please turn the light off. That's right, off has the ah sound. I like you a lot. Can you find the word that has the ah sound? I like you a lot. That's right, lot. Tadpoles turn into frogs. Can you find the word that has the ah sound? Tadpoles turn into frogs. That's right, frogs has the ah sound. Let's blend these sounds. Ma. S, sa. Fa. Ra. B, ba. N, na. G, ga. J, ja. T, ta. P, pa. D, da. H, ha. As, as. Of. O, r, r. Ab, ab. An. Aj, aj. Ag, ag. At, at. Up, up. Ad, ad. Ah. Let's blend these sounds into words. G, at. Got, d, at. Dot, h, at. Hot, t, at. Tot, p, at. Pot, r, at. Rot, n, at. Not, dog, dog. Fog, fog. Hug, hog. Bog, bog. Dab, dab. Bob, mob. Sab, sob. Rob. Top. Hop. Hop. Mop. Pop. Sod. Sod. Nod. Nod. Pod. Pod. Rod. God. God. Pond. and, pond, pond, and, fond, fond, bond, 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 boss, 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 moss, 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 toss, 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 st up, stop, stop, frog, 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 trot, 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 trod, 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 drop, 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 smog, 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 smog. We are going to learn some sight words. Sight words are words that we use a lot when reading and writing. Sometimes these words do not have an image that can go with them. They're just words that you need to understand and memorize when you see them. Let's learn some of these words. Two. We will walk to the park. Two, 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 two. Do. Do you know Jesus as your Savior? Do, 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 do. Soon. Soon we will be done with our schoolwork. Soon, 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 soon. Of. Do you have one of these? Of, 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 of. Does. Does she like the color green? Does, 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 does.
Be strong. God is with thee. Deuteronomy chapter 31, verse 6a and b. Daniel was a young man who had been taken captive by the enemies of his people. He and his 3 friends were in a foreign country as prisoners. They did not know what would happen to them or if they would ever get back home again, but they knew God would care for them. Daniel was a young man who loved God and lived for God. 3 times a day, Daniel prayed to God, kneeling by his open window. Daniel was in the midst of people who did not love God. They did not like him to pray. In the new country, the food that the king wanted Daniel and his friends to eat was rich and fancy, not at all like what Daniel had eaten at home. He and his friends felt that God wanted them to continue to eat the simple, healthy food to which they were accustomed. "I'm afraid I'll get into trouble if you don't eat this food," said the man who was in charge of the captives. "What if you get thin and weak? Try it just 10 days. Let us have just vegetables and water for 10 days. Then you can look at us and see if we look weak and thin," Daniel said. "We think we'll be stronger." The person in charge of them agreed, And sure enough, in 10 days, they looked better than the captives who had been eating the fancy food. God gave these 4 Hebrew men knowledge and skill in all learning and wisdom, because they wanted to please him, and he had a job for them. After many years passed, Daniel became an assistant to the king and became the first president. The other officers and princes wanted to find something against Daniel so they could accuse him before the king. Daniel followed God so closely that his enemies could not find anything wrong with which to accuse him. They finally decided that the only way would be to trap Daniel and to find something wrong with his worship of God. So they decided on a clever plan. They would get the king to pass a law that people must pray to the king when they wanted something. The king did not realize that this would mean no one could pray to God. He just was thinking about himself, and so he agreed to pass the law. Of course, Daniel knew about the law. What do you think he would do about it? He had previously been opening his window towards Jerusalem 3 times a day as he knelt, prayed, and gave thanks to God. Should he continue to do this? He surely knew that he would be reported to the king. If he did. In fact, Daniel may have been aware that the officers had tricked the king into making this law so that they could accuse Daniel before the king. Daniel decided to continue praying to his God. He went into his house with his windows open towards Jerusalem. He got down on his knees 3 times a day as he prayed and gave thanks before his God, just as he had previously done. Do you think the king heard about it? Of course he did. The officers found Daniel there, and they immediately went to the king. Now they could get Daniel in trouble. Remember the decree you signed, O king? Remember the law says that for 30 days no one can ask anything of anyone but you. You said that if a person prayed to anyone but you, he would be thrown into the den of lions. We have found someone who did not obey that law, O king. Yes, it is true. That is the law I made and signed, said the king, and it cannot be changed now. Who has disobeyed it? Daniel, who is one of the captives from Judah, has not obeyed your law. He has been praying 3 times a day to his God. Do you think the king was angry with Daniel? No, he was not. He was angry with himself. He knew now that he had been tricked into signing a bad law. He wanted to deliver Daniel. He did not want to carry out the law that he had made. He tried until sunset to think of something to do to save Daniel, but he could do nothing. The law could not be changed. Then the man came again and said to the king, You know you will have to carry out the law that you made. No law that the king has signed may be changed. The king sadly agreed, and he asked them to bring Daniel. Daniel was brought and cast into the den of lions, and the king did not give up hope. He knew how much Daniel loved God, and he knew that Daniel believed God would help him. Daniel, may your God that you have served so faithfully deliver you, he declared. A stone was brought and laid over the lion's den, and the king had to seal it with his own ring. What a miserable night the king spent. All he could think of was Daniel in the den with the lions. Was Daniel safe? Would God really protect Daniel? Early the next morning, the king hurried down to the den of lions. What had happened? Would Daniel be alive or dead? Daniel, he called. Daniel, O Daniel, servant of the living God. Is your God, whom you serve all the time, able to deliver you from the lions? He almost held his breath as he waited for an answer. Would the lions roar and jump? Was Daniel possibly alive after a night with the lions? He heard something. A voice. It was Daniel. O king, live forever. My God has sent his angel and has shut the lion's mouth, and they have not hurt me. God knew, O king, that I did nothing to hurt you, that I was innocent of doing wrong. The king was so happy. Daniel was alive. His God was real. God had not let the hungry lions touch Daniel. What a wonderful God. "Bring him up out of the lion's den," the king shouted to his soldiers. "He is alive!" Eagerly he watched as Daniel appeared out of the lion's den. There was not a mark on him, not a scratch from a big paw, nothing. Daniel looked as healthy as when he was put into the lion's den. Because Daniel had believed God, God had taken care of Daniel. The king shouted, "Bring those men who accused Daniel. Gather them up with their families. They shall all go into the lion's den." Quickly it was done, but God did not protect these wicked men who hated him. The lion had the mastery of them, and they were destroyed. Daniel was given back to his high position and did a wonderful work for God. God revealed to Daniel much about the things that would happen in the world. Daniel was even told some wonderful truths about the coming of Christ in glory. Daniel 1 and 6. Character objective. Courageous. To know that God helps me to do what I should. Why did God take care of Daniel? Because Daniel believed in God and relied on him. Daniel was not afraid to let others know what he believed. He knew that sometimes a Christian must be different and that we must do what God tells us to do even if other people don't like it. Then we must realize God is with us, giving strength and firmness of character that enables us to endure any trial or danger. When we have something hard to do, we can ask God to help us. Sometimes it takes courage to stand alone for God, but He wants us to be strong. Remember this verse, Deuteronomy 31:6. Be strong, God is with thee. Deuteronomy 31:6. Be strong, God is with thee. Deuteronomy 31:6. Be strong, God is with thee. Say it with me. Deuteronomy 31:6. Be strong, God is with thee. One more time together. Deuteronomy 31:6. Be strong, God is with thee.
Ostrich reads, ah, ah, ah. O reads, ah, ah, ah.